Well, this is always fun when you get some news here in the last hour that just pops up and ends up being what'll be a big part of our conversation with the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, who joins us. Of course, it is Chiefs opening day. We'll get to all that fluff towards the end of the conversation. But I got to start off with this, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, by the way. You just put out this letter to Jackson County Executive Frank White and Chairman Darren McGee saying the city is not going to move forward with a partnership on the detention center in Jackson County. Why is that?
A few different reasons, one of which is the fact that, some of the terms just really didn't work, I think, for the best interest of Kansas City or our taxpayers. Jackson County wanted us to come to an agreement by September the 15th. However, we just received information about what the details would look like last Friday. In addition to that, although we were talking about a shared facility, Jackson County did not want us to be a part of at least the shared relationship on food, on laundry, on intake. So after a while, you start to wonder, is this a shared facility at all? Well, I have great thanks to Jackson County Sheriff Darrell Forte, our former police chief, the chairman of the legislature, Deron McGee, and his colleagues. I just don't think that this was a true partnership in the clearest sense. And so we decided it's much better for Kansas City to go alone on its own facility.
So it sounds to me, basically, you thought that it feels like what I'm hearing is you felt they were looking for the city to basically subsidize it, but you didn't really have any skin in the game in terms of decision-making for that facility.
It sounds like we really didn't, and our preference would have been, and I think for our taxpayers, right, and a lot of you are taking it on the chin now with property tax increases and beyond, to say how can we spend not $500 million on two separate facilities, but really try to do a good design facility for $350 million with the addition of city inmates. They're arrested often by the same police department and beyond, but it wasn't working in this one. That's all right. We'll continue to build. We do, I certainly find necessary that we have a detention center. That is key to the future of Kansas City. We need to make sure that there are mental health services where people who are in crisis are involuntarily sat down in one of our facilities to make sure that they don't reoffend. So those are a number of steps we have. We expect to have fuller answers by January, including a potential ballot question that may come sometime after.
So a ballot question to basically build your own jail here in town?
I think that would be one look at it. We have been quoted a range of prices, ranging from $250 to $300 million. Others have said it'll be $50 million. Like everything, and I talk to my friends in public safety and beyond all the time, it's often a money issue, and unfortunately it shouldn't be. It should be a safety issue. And the people who concern me the most, and I know your callers have talked about this, aren't necessarily your recidivist thieves and all those sorts of things, although they are trouble. But it is a lot of these people right now who are in crisis on the streets, that are in episodes sometimes are kind of spaced out in a different world. Those people need to be off the streets. They need to get help. And that's the sort of thing we want to make sure that this facility is doing so that ourselves, our families, and them can be safe.
Is there any money left over from all the COVID spending that could be used on this?
So Jackson County continues to have funding. You'll have to bring them on to kind of talk about what their plan is. I believe they still do have ARPA funds, perhaps even some CARES Act funds, to the tunes of millions of dollars that I think could be helpful on that. For those of us in Kansas City, I think we were in some ways more efficient in how we were spending our money. And so we don't have that. That being said, we've received money through an opioid settlement. We've received funding in a number of other areas. Our goal is to see no tax increase to the taxpayers of Kansas City in connection with construction of this facility. I will also note that we continue to work with other partners, including Platte County, that I know has detention needs, to make sure that we're fixing broadly the entire public safety conversation. The status quo of what's happening on our streets right now is unacceptable, including to those of us in government, and so we'll work to do more here.
No one could have ever predicted the last 2.5, 3 years in this country, Mr. Mayor, but in hindsight, shutting down the jail 5-6 years ago now, you were on the city council at the time, running for mayor. How big of a mistake was that? I mean, I know it's 2020 now, hindsight, but how big of a mistake was that in hindsight?
I think if we go way back to the city's decision to close the municipal farm, its own detention facility, which in talking to officers wasn't really the strongest place in terms of people breaking out or so, but it still was a detention facility. I think that's a clear mistake. And I don't think the city should have ever made such an exchange, particularly knowing that we were subject to contract in perpetuity. And the decision to leave the jail in Jackson County, we were kicked out, actually. And it's been, kind of a struggle ever since. I would have hoped over all this time that cooler heads might have prevailed, that we could find reason to cooperate. I continue to be an optimist, but to the extent that we're not, we got a lot of work to do. We need to make sure these cities are safe, and particularly for our municipal offenders. Jackson County Jail is going to deal with a lot of your murderers, a lot of those other folks who are frankly more hardened criminals. But for us, we've had indecent exposure in the park. We've had these sorts of things where these people right now are getting out and walking the streets right after with a ticket. Mm-hmm. That is wholly unacceptable. And so that's the sort of thing we need to try to fix and try to fix soon. And we're going to be committed to doing that before I'm done as mayor.
What, if you get something on the ballot early next year, I mean, what's a realistic timeline? If something were to pass to have a new jail facility in Kansas City?
Depends on the solution. I think priority number one needs to have at least 100 involuntary commitment mental health beds. What that would mean is that if you're somebody who is presenting as a crisis, what we aren't going to do is just medicate you at usually one of our public health hospitals and then put you right back out on the streets to reoffend, but instead those folks are sitting down. I would hope that that's a 2-year time frame for that. So we're right now and everything else in Kansas City, we're saying open by the 2026 World Cup. I would hope at least a facility that handles that is open soon. Then your other municipal inmates, those who are, thieves, drunken driving, other offenses that can be incarcerated in a more normalized facility, you keep those relationships with our other counties in the interim until you can have a facility open. But I certainly think the mental health beds, and by the way, these are our mental health beds where you are required to stay. This isn't optional, go in, get one pharmaceutical, and call it a day. This is you are a danger to yourself, to your family, to the people of this community. I hope that sort of facility is open by the middle of 2026.
Mayor Quinton Lucas is on KCMO Talk Radio. Always good to have him on. Mr. Mayor, I want to touch on a couple things. I'm sure you saw the report. Rental prices in Kansas City jumped year over year, the highest in the nation, according to Rent.com. What is the solution here? I know you're going to think about it from a public service perspective, but whether it's the public sector, the private sector, what's the solution here for Kansas City on that front right now?
There are a few different ones, one of which is we need to build more. We need to build more. And so what we need to not do is overly restrict the production of housing in Kansas City. And what that means is the density is not a bad thing, that infill, particularly in the core of the city, is not a bad thing, and that the production of housing, not just in Kansas City, but region-wide, needs to be something that's strongly supported. I am somebody, look, I'm not from Houston, Texas, so I'm not saying get rid of zoning entirely, but building on smaller lots is not bad. Building taller buildings is not bad. Making sure that we are allowing for faster permitting of single-family homes throughout the region is going to be incredibly important. People act surprised in some ways when these sorts of things happen, but I think it is very simply a supply and demand issue. There is not enough money in Kansas City, Missouri, just like there's not enough money in New York Metro and lots of other places, even where you have rent support, like they do in New York, to have enough housing for everybody. You got people on the streets out there and in California. And so it is allowing the private market to solve a lot of our problems, to make sure that we're building more. And I hope that that's what policymakers region-wide are agreeing to, as opposed to having these types of restrictions that keep us from building more housing.
Mm-hmm. As we get set for the Chiefs tonight, Mr. Mayor, I know you're going to be out at Arrowhead, but I was thinking about this yesterday. If it hadn't been for the Chiefs' run of success over the last 5 years, everybody thinks of this town, they think of the Chiefs, right? What would the thing that Kansas City would be known for over the last 5 years if the Chiefs weren't having this level of success?
A few things. First of all, we are a great community. We always have been. And so ranging from barbecue to great cultural offerings, that would be very helpful. Don't get me wrong. I have a nickname of Aldi brand Obama, like the store. Literally tens and tens of people know us for that. But what I would say is that, look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I tell the truth every week on the Monday in the Morning show. The Chiefs make a huge difference. You know this when you go back home. I know this when I've traveled around the country, and I'm actually wrapping up a vacation here out east. This matters. This actually does matter, the Chiefs' success and their brand in the same way that the Packers do, and even big East Coast cities kind of get known for their sports for good or bad, and West Coast ones. And so I think this is positive. I think it's great. That's why professional sports, just like having a good football team for your local university or a good basketball team, can be really helpful. And I have no shame in that in saying the Chiefs are a huge part of brand Kansas City.
So you're, I guess, flying back today. You'll be at Arrowhead tonight.
Yeah.
Give us I don't want to put a season prediction on you, but we'll take a game prediction tonight. Doesn't look like Chris Jones is playing. Kelsey's who knows. So is this one going to be closer than people expect?
Well, by the way, I'm in a state where sports gambling is lawful, the way it should be in Missouri. All of you Kansans are lucky going in place. I heard it was about a 4.5-point spread when last I looked, but hey, still stay legal wherever you are. I don't mind that spread. I think it is a little close. It's under one touchdown, and so I'll put the Chiefs up. You're going to put some field goals in. Let's say I'm going to go with a weird 23-17 score.
23-17. All right. And if you see the mayor in Leavenworth later today, you know what he's doing. All right. All right.
Amen.
Well, we will see you out at Arrowhead tonight, Mr. Mayor. Have a great rest of the day and safe travels back to town.
It is the most wonderful time of the year. Enjoy the game tonight. Have a good weekend, everybody.
You as well. That is Quinton Lucas on KCMO Talk Radio.